Let us pray, say the gratitude.
We thank thee, O Christ our God, that thou hast satisfied us with thy earthly blessings. Deprive us not also of thy heavenly kingdom, but as thou comest among thy disciples, O Savior, and gavest them peace, come to us and save us.
Grateful to God that we have such opportunity to see and to hear your lections. Please.
Good afternoon. Wonderful to be here. I want to first respectfully remember Archbishop Peter's memory. May his soul rest in peace with the saints. When I moved back to Chicago and opened up my Orthodox practice, he was very welcoming and had asked me to do a few things for his community, which was a great blessing. So I just want to honor his memory here today, and I may he rest with the saints. I also want to thank very much Jane and Stan for reaching out to me and asking me to do this here and be with you here today. It's a great blessing, and they've worked very hard, and I know I caused them some stress, so my apologies. It's not easy to put something together like this, and it's a beautiful turnout here. I also want to thank Father Leondi as the MC. I've been friends with him for a very long time now, and I'm very much a part of the Pan-Orthodox community. I was at the seminary, and I love us all getting together and we are all one under Christ, and we should do this more often. So. Okay, so I only have 30 minutes, and if you've ever been to one of my presentations, I can stand here for 3 hours and not stop. So I have to keep pace, and Stan's going to help me out. So I apologize if I'm running fast, but there's a lot to share with you today. So we're going to talk about mental health. And what I want to do to warm us up a little bit here is start with some basics, the anatomy of stress. Stress is important for us to understand because really it's the precursor to more sicknesses. And so I'm going to read something to you very insightful about what's happening with our body when it comes to stress. And just so you know, they are going to forward the slides, digital slides for you. You don't have to take notes. You just have to relax, just listen, enjoy, and they're going to make sure all this material gets to you. So bear with me and start to pay attention to what is happening here. On the anatomy of stress, and I'm quoting from Dr. Pierce Howard's book on the Owner's Manual for the Brain. This is a very good piece of information. When one senses that one's goal is being blocked, the something that serves as the obstacle is called a stressor. Put another way, stress occurs when the body's normal homeostasis has been disturbed. Stressors can be anything from fear-arousing enemies to anxiety-arousing fantasies, from flat tires that prevent you from getting to your child's soccer game, to invitations to go on a much-desired date or social outing when you must complete an assignment with an imminent deadline. Stressors are not intrinsically good things or bad things. We have to remember that. Stress gets you up in the morning to come to church. That's a good stress. So stress is not all bad. So a healthy individual is not zero stress. We have to remember that. A little stress is good. But when it gets out of control, it's very bad. So stressors are not intrinsically good things or bad things. They simply get in the way towards working towards your goal. The more important the goal, the more potent the stressor. The greater the felt stress. The stress itself is an emotion, or rather typically a blend of emotions. However, inasmuch as stressors can be joyful as well as saddening, the emotion of stress itself can include both positive and negative emotions in one blend. I'll give you a simple example. Jane and Stan, they were stressed putting this together, but they're joyous because you all showed up, right? Good and bad. For example, the emotional stress you feel when your grandchild comes to visit you, when you've worked much to do this, but joy is mixed with resentment or dread when you're trying to prepare your home for your visit with your grandkids. One's perception of an event or situation as goal-deterring is crucial in determining its actual effect as a stressor. How you interpret it. It's very simple. I've had patients in my office say, I always thought I was a positive person. But when we really drill down to it, they're like, oh my God, I'm so negative. How you perceive that. Very powerful. Accordingly, 80% of the effect of stressors is one's perception of it as goal-deterring. If I do not perceive an event as keeping me from pursuing and attaining my goals, I do not perceive it as stressful. Stress then is in the eye of the beholder. The critical test for a situation having achieved major stressor status is whether the individual feels out of control. That's the key. Stress is the point at which an event or circumstance makes the individual say, I've lost total control of my destiny. Stressors are not only negative and hostile as when we are evicted from a home. They may also be positive and friendly as when we move into a new home. In both cases, prolonged stress can be harmful, causing us to feel the need to get away from the stressors. Now listen carefully, because this is the key to a lot of our problems in our modern society, is because we've prolonged the anxiety and the stress, and now it is harming our bodies. So, when stress occurs, our bodies mobilize for the one of the 3 F's: freeze, fight, or flee. The reaction includes, now this is where it gets a little interesting, the dilation of the pupils for maximum visual perception, even in darkness, constriction of the arteries for maximum pressure to pump the blood to the heart and other muscles, activation of the adrenal gland to pump cortisol, which maintains pupil dilation, artery constriction, enlargement of the vessels to the heart to facilitate the return of the flow of blood, metabolism of the fat cells and glucose for energy, constriction of vessels to the skin, kidneys, and digestive tract, shutting down digestion to maximize readiness for the fight or flight response. Control of this process lies in the hypothalamus, which acts as a control console. So it goes on to talk about the parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system. But what we're talking about here is general adaptation syndrome. This is a very popular term, the GAS, general adaptation syndrome. The term originated from Hans Selye, a French physiologist in Canada in the 1950s. So, normally stress comes and goes. Fears and anxieties, for the most of us, subside shortly after their onset. But here's where it gets dangerous. So what happens here, listen carefully, because this is where we get chronic medical conditions. When I was working at the Cancer Wellness Center back in the between 2005 and 2012, the medical community finally came out with the research showing that 70% of our illnesses start where? Right there. They start there. And because they become chronic, our body then starts to deteriorate because of what we're doing in an unhealthy way to ourselves. So listen carefully to this part. Ira Black reports that as sympathetic nervous system stimulation of 30 to 90 minutes can result in a 200 to 300% increase in enzymes and impulse activity for 12 hours to 3 days, and in some cases for up to 2 weeks. But what happens when fears and anxieties don't subside? This is the problem. They just keep going. We just let them go on. What happens when stressors don't go away and the feeling of fear and anxiety persist over time? In a word, the high levels of cortisol become toxic to our bodies. During the sustained period of GAS, general adaptation syndrome, when the posterior hypothalamus is active, the performance of the immune system is seriously impaired. So, what I'm going to do is, because I have to move on, think about this. When we have that prolonged stress, we are compromising our immune system, which is there to help us what? Fight the cold and fight other illnesses. But if we've been prolonging our anxiety and stress for days, weeks, months, years, there is a negative effect on our body. And we cannot then fight off the common cold as maybe we did years back. So, I wanted to get you a little bit into this idea of health now, understanding what we're doing to our bodies. We have to understand it starts here most of the time. Not all of the time, most of the time. So, let's continue. All right, so if we look at anxieties, there's a simple way to understand. Simple fear occurs when one reacts to a concrete, immediate threat. Fear, concrete, immediate threat. You're jogging down or you're walking down like one of our forest preserve paths and a coyote pops up. Your body goes, oh, boom. You get as fast as you can get out of there because you're afraid. That's a natural response. That's good. But that's an immediate one. Where's the problem? Anxiety occurs when one reacts to a more remote possibility, that a threat that might occur, not is occurring, might, remote, not absolute in that moment. So we have to be able to quiet ourselves down, because what we're doing, the word I like to use with my patients is anticipatory anxiety. You are thinking and worrying about something that's not going to happen in this very moment. Maybe it happens tomorrow. Maybe it's going to happen next month. Maybe it's going to happen this summer. Why are you making yourself sick now? Now. What are you doing to your body right now? Why? So anxiety is not healthy. Fear is normal. I see somebody point a gun at me. Yes, I'm afraid. That's normal. Somebody says, oh, Ari, you might die this summer from food poisoning. Okay. So if I don't control my thoughts, I could obsess about this for the next 4 months. And now I'm just stressing my body out. This is not healthy. This is dangerous. So these are some typical ones that you all have heard of. So let's go through them just a little bit here. Generalized anxiety disorder, waking up and expecting the worst throughout the day. Okay, people don't realize. When you wake up, think about your conscious thought. Are you thinking of God when you wake up? Or are you thinking about, oh my gosh, I'm going to be late? And what you're doing to your mind as soon as you think that, you're creating the worry in the first moment. So I'll give you a little tip. People will say to me, my patients will say to me, why did I have a panic attack when I woke up? I just woke up. I didn't think about anything and I had a panic attack. And the short answer, because it's too long to go into this in more detail, is that that person has had unresolved issues in their life that they've not put to rest, and they've been building and building and building and building and building for months and sometimes years. It could be an old friend that you had a fight with 2 years ago, unresolved, sitting in your subconscious. It could be anger at a professor that didn't score your paper well, sitting in your unconscious. It could be a fight with your mother or your brother or anybody, sitting in your unconscious. It's just sitting unresolved. And when you have too much of that, you wake up feeling like that, out of control. Why am I feeling like this? Because it's unresolved. This is the harbor of that anxiety. We have to work towards resolution and peace. You have to fix those problems so that you are a healthier person. So generalized anxiety is different than the panic disorder. Panic disorder is a sense of terror that feels paralyzing without warning. Without warning. This is the key. Without warning. Boom, it hits you. When that person says, I woke up and had a panic attack, that's a part of panic disorder. Without warning, your body physiologically is having an issue. And probably 70%, and this I'm not saying factually, 70%, my guess, of the ER visits, emergency room visits, they are not heart attacks. the physician says, you just had a panic attack. So everyone's freaking out. Am I having a heart attack? Go to the ER. Nope, you didn't have a heart attack. You had a panic attack. So we need to learn how to manage our anxiety. Phobias, snakes, heights, germs, test taking for students. This is something where something has had a mini trauma in your life early on, and you've been carrying it, and you're not trying to overcome it. So sometimes phobias, as an Orthodox man, I often think some of the phobias have to do with, unfortunately, and this is not good for us as Orthodox, some of our motherlands were really into superstition. Superstition does not go with our faith. It's a big no-no. But yet, it's so integrated into our faith that we have people acting superstitiously and doing these things, and they create sometimes phobias like, if I don't do this, this is going to happen. I have to do this. No, but that just comes from ancient superstitions that we have to wipe out of our faith here. OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder, ruminating or repeated thoughts that are intruding and causing a constant worry or disrupt your work or day, and also repeated behavior. So OCD doesn't mean that you wash your hands 30 times. OCD is for people that do other things. In other words, OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder, is disruptive in your daily life. It's not helping you. You have to work towards a relief from that. Otherwise, your life is filtered through that obsession. This is not a way to be living life. You know that. So all of these anxieties disrupt our faith and our prayer life and our trust in God. But we have to first, and that's why the first part of my presentation is about the physiological, the mental, what's going on. So let me draw something out for you quickly. I'm not an artist. So here's our brain, and this is the prefrontal cortex, the executive part of the brain. So this is the last part of the brain to physically grow. So when forgive me for saying it this way, when our teenagers and our college students do stupid things, it's because that part of the brain isn't done growing until about 25 years old. 24, 25. Why do they do that? They're so stupid. Well, part of the reason is because of that. It's not fully grown. But this is the executive part of the brain. What's important here are the other parts that we forget about. And that is the amygdala and the hippocampus. So the amygdala and the hippocampus are more the emotional connections for us, historical emotion and immediate emotion. But what happens is we have a trigger. So this trigger comes at us. And if we don't keep ourselves calm and handle it with this part of the brain, rationally thinking and working through it, and we allow it to bypass this and then hit these parts of the brain, what happens is, once those two parts really start going, what shuts down? This shuts down. And now you're not thinking and speaking rationally. You are yelling and screaming and arguing and in a panic. So one of the ways we quiet that down is to not let these two parts of our brain take over, which means we need to stay calm. How do you stay calm? I'll give you a very important physical tip. Breathe. I mean it. Breathe through your nose. Hold it for a few seconds. Out through your mouth slowly. Keep your blood pressure and your heart rate and your breathing down. Breathe. Because when you do that, you start to allow your body to relax, and you allow the prefrontal cortex to kind of get back in track. This is key. People forget, God gave us an amazing body. Really. But everyone who's in a panic and stressing out and with anxiety, their breathing is terrible. Breathe. Okay. How are we doing? Okay. Depression. Okay. So depression, another popular word that we hear and use. Depression is thought to be a malfunction of the monoamine neurotransmitters, including norepinephrine, serotonin, and dopamine. Risk factors for depression include heart disease, Parkinson's, stroke, immune dysfunction, previous depressive episodes, and substance abuse. So, I always ask a patient their history, because I want to know one thing. Are you more prone to depression, or are you more prone to anxiety? And that's something to be more insightful. Is your family history more on the depressive side, more on the anxious side? The reality is that a person who has depression can become anxious, and a person who's anxious can become depressed. So they share symptoms. But you want to know what's at the core. What's at the core? And this is important. Are you more of an anxious person? Then focus on alleviating that anxiety. Are you more a depressed person? You need to focus on helping your mood, elevate your mood. So, evolutionary psychologists suggest that the origins of depression for men and women differ according to the unique paths the two sexes have trod over thousands of years. Here's something very interesting in the research. So, men and women. Many women and men have had careers and they've had relationships, friends. But listen to how this works. If a man who has friends and a career loses his friends but maintains his career, he's less likely to slip into a depression. Oops, someone's getting a call. If a man loses his career but maintains his friends, he's more likely to slip into a depression. If a woman loses her career and maintains her friends, she's less likely to slip into a depression. If a woman loses her friends and maintains her career, she's more likely to slip into a depression. Interesting, isn't that? So we understand we are different. No matter what the woke society has been trying to throw in our faces, men and women are different. God made us all in his image and likeness, but there are differences, and this is one of the unique differences. So when it comes to depression, especially in those of you who have children and teenagers, I stress this highly. You want your child not to slip into a depression, you make sure they have at least one friend. One friend. And that will be the medicine that allows them to safely navigate junior high and high school. One friend, minimum one friend. When they have no friends, now they're in trouble. Now you're going to have problems. So please, keep that in mind. You want to encourage friendships, but the right friendships, don't get me wrong. We're not talking about, hey, yeah, mom and dad, my friends want to go to the park tonight. And you end up finding out they're smoking marijuana. Oh, yeah, of course you don't want that kind of friendship, right? So, but friendships are important for the mood. It's about, so what we see is that this mood piece, it gets mixed up. Oh, I don't know if my child's anxious or if my child's depressed. But if they have good, solid friends and their friendships are good, usually they're mostly anxious. And we have to work on their anxiety. But if they don't have any friends at all, usually they're depressed. And we're trying to help them bring them into a group of people. It could be friends from church or a team, sports, soccer, or music. But that's important to keep that mood stable. So, how many minutes do we have? 5? Okay. All right. So moving along here. So what we want to do also is understand the family part of these problems. So what I'm also looking at is family history. You have a mother and a father, and they have 3 kids. In my example, I'm going to do it this way just to show you how this works sometimes. These parents had 3 daughters, Now, the father was an alcoholic. And now these 3 daughters are grown up and they married. So, they grew up in an alcoholic family. So what do you think is going to happen with 3 daughters? Well, guess what? This is probability. This is not certainty, but I'm giving you probability here. Daughter number 1 grows up and says, I'm never drinking ever. I'm never touching alcohol. And she finds a man that doesn't drink. He's dry. So they become a dry family. No alcohol in that family. Daughter number 2, she didn't like the way she experienced that alcohol either from her dad. So she doesn't become an alcoholic. But guess what she does? She marries an alcoholic. Why? Because she grew up in that environment that she was used to, comfortable with. I can navigate this. The worst decision she made. But she marries an alcoholic. And what happens to daughter number 3? She becomes the alcoholic. These are probabilities. This stuff really does happen. So we have to be very aware of ourselves to help ourselves be the healthiest we can be. And we have to be knowing, okay, what's wrong with my thinking? Because the danger is when young people grow up to think, I know what I need to do, and they never get advice. Big mistake. Big mistake. Look, I'm Greek. Greeks will grow up there, oh, you're depressed. Snap out of it. I mean, really. I mean, that's how the generations were. I'm sure the other, you know what I'm talking about. They have no clue what depression is, no clue what anxiety is. I just need to slap my son and he's going to be fine. But this is what we have to do. We have to be more educated and aware of what we do need to do to be healthier. That's the key. All right, I'm running out of time here. So last thing I want to before we take our first break. Whoops. Whoop, what did I do here? Oh, sorry. There we go. Okay. So, important question. Is it genetic or is it learned? Guess what? It's both. It's both. And we have to be respectful of the fact that it's both genetic and learned. There is so much research out there because you can have a wonderful, wonderful family that is very solid and they have adopted a beautiful child, but something is not right that they have no awareness of because of that child's genetic connection to his biological parents. That is, there's no history in their family of this, but that child's genetics brought that into his life. That's pure genetic. But because they're such a good, solid couple and family and good-minded and healthy, they're able to help that child deal with whatever genetic predisposition they might have. So what do we deal with? Well, we need to focus mostly on learned behavior, right? So what happens is these 3 girls have to be aware to say, what did I learn from what I lived with this alcoholic parent? I need to now transform my family life to be healthier so that we don't have a repeat. Because I've asked in history, and I'll say, oh, okay, you have depression, 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 alcoholism, 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 gambling, gambling, gambling. It just goes on every generation if you're not careful. So you want to be very mindful of like, hey, look, I love my parents too, but no parent's perfect. You want to take the good and you want to be mindful of the not so good and not repeat that in your own relationships and your own family life. You have to be conscientious about that. So you have 2 kids or 4 kids or 6 kids. Genetics means that some of your kids will be more resilient. They can handle the stress at home better than their siblings. That's genetic. Like they'll say, oh, Dr. Hart, why is this son's hard, but that son's not doing well, and my daughter's here, and this. I said, okay, slow down. Like, they're all my kids. Why is one handling it this way and the other that way? That's part of the genetic, the resiliency, that's just part of their DNA. They can handle the stress better than their sister or their brother. But the learn part is on you. How do you help your family make the family structure healthier? You have to be aware of your own weaknesses. You have to know your own struggles, and you have to work on you being a healthier person. One of my favorite things from readings is St. Porphyrios. He says to parents a very simple command. He says, be holy. Be holy. That's his number one advice to parents. Be holy. That's what we have to try to do. So, we're good? All right, so we are going to now do the breakout session. And these are the 2 questions I have for breakout session number 1 for all of you. Question number 1, what is the most common reason you think you experience anxiety? Question number 2, have you ever turned to God to help you let go of your anxious thoughts? Those are the 2 questions for the breakout session. So, we're good.
We thank thee, O Christ our God, that thou hast satisfied us with thy earthly blessings. Deprive us not also of thy heavenly kingdom, but as thou camest among thy disciples, O Savior, and gavest them peace, come to us and save us. Glory to the Father, and to the Son, and to the Holy Spirit, both now and ever, and unto the ages of ages. Amen. Lord have mercy, Lord have mercy, Lord have mercy, Master bless.
Благословен Бог, милый, питай нас из своих богатых даров, своей благодати и человеколюбием, всегда ныне и присно и во веки веков.